I'm going to get started, though we might have some folks running a wee bit late. My name's Jared Frazier. I live up in Montana. I'm originally from the Midwest, and I run in... You're originally from the Midwest? Your hand went up. Why?
I was going to ask you if your name was Montana Dan.
Was what? Montana Dan? No, but my daughter's name is Hannah, and she lives in Montana, and she has no idea about any of that stuff. And the kids at school are like, Hannah Montana. She's like, I don't understand. She also hates bananas because of Hannah Banana. And yeah. Anyway, I run an organization called 2% for Conservation, and I'm going to get into what that is here in a second. But I learned a long time ago that it's not great listening to someone that you really don't know anything about. So I'm going to share a little bit about me. Where I grew up in northern Wisconsin, I grew up like... You guys know what the word poverty line means? Or the phrase poverty line? It's like you don't have much money. Like my family was like way down here. My parents, first 5 years of my life, per year made what the average American family makes per month. Less than $5,000. We were crazy poor. And we lived in an area that didn't, like our town didn't even have a fire department. My parents were working with kids and families who had abuse stuff going on, so I always had kids coming over who were dealing with things that they would like stay in my room and stuff. But the way we would eat was hunting and fishing year round, and not because it was fun. I did not grow up hunting and fishing for fun. I'm one of those weirdos. It was literally to have food. In fact, when I was a month old, my parents, it was winter, so they were out ice fishing. Anyone know what ice fishing is? Yeah, a bunch of you do. Okay, for those who don't, ice fishing is the ice covers the lake, okay? My mom grew up in South America, so when she went back down and like explained to folks like the lake freezes over, I'll do questions and comments later, that the lakes freeze over, they're like, oh my God, like it's some kind of devilry. And it is, it's amazing when you can skate on it and all that kind of stuff, but you drill a hole through the ice, or in our case, you would take a chisel and chisel a hole in the ice, and then you try to fish through it and not freeze your sweet buns off the entire time. Well, my parents, because the ice was like 3 feet deep, and they were using these things called tip-ups that automatically, help you catch the fish, they would make a hole about a foot deep, and they'd wrap me up in towels and blankets, and they'd put me as like a 1-month-old into the hole in the ice, like every day, while they would go out fishing. And I would sit in there, and I have no memories of this, obviously, because I was like a month old. But in between feedings, that's where they'd put me, and I would sleep in that little hole that was drilled about a foot deep into the ice. When I had siblings born, then it was my job to like hold them. So I was the only one who got the ice hole treatment. When I was 5, how many of y'all like fireworks? Yeah, like everyone more or less likes fireworks for the most. My dog hates fireworks. My son likes like about the first half of fireworks, and then he's just plugging his ears the rest of the night. But I didn't grow up seeing fireworks until I was 5. It was 4th of July. I was out fishing with my dad, like we did most nights, because that's when they start to really bite. And it was like part of our daily chores was going fishing, which again, weird, because like I do that for fun now. But we're out in the boat, and you can hear the Wisconsin accent there, boat. We're out in the boat, and I'm like, Dad, I have to go. I'm like, well, the fish are biting. Just go over the side. Because if you're a guy, you just, you go over the side of the boat. And I was like, not like that. It's the other one. And he goes, oh, well, the fish are really biting. So he takes the minnow bucket, which is a bucket that you use for keeping the minnows in for your fishing. And we would trap the minnows. So they were, like, getting more minnows was not a problem, because we had these little minnow traps. You put bread in it. They swim in. They get stuck. And then you get all the minnows. You put them on a hook. You go down and you catch the bigger fish that you can actually eat a bunch of, right? So he dumps out the minnows, puts a little bit more water in it, and he goes, there you go, in the back of the boat. And so I sit down precariously, And just as I was getting up the courage, you know those times when you need a little bit of courage, like in a public restroom or something like that? Just getting up the courage to take care of business. Boom! I saw my first firework because it was 4th of July night. And I'm sitting on the minnow bucket, little shorts around my ankles, watching the fireworks. So that was what my childhood was like, was not minnow bucket toilets all the time, but pretty weird that way. I ended up moving out. I lived in a super poor part of the state, and there weren't a lot of job opportunities. Our school was horrible. Like, I ran out of coursework as a sophomore, not because I was crazy smart or anything, but because like their coursework was from the 1950s, and they couldn't even hire enough teachers and stuff. It was the second worst school district in the state of Wisconsin, which is saying something. So I left home at 16 years old. And first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to go be in a major city. I wanted to go see the world. So I got in my car that I had scrapped and saved for and drove down to Chicago, which is, just a little bit of a city, and slept on the streets in my car. And would walk around all the fancy places and go to fancy restaurants and order bread because I couldn't order anything else on the menu. But I was learning how the world worked. But I was very, very, very far removed from my wild upbringing, just completely removed from it. And I was traveling around to Finland and the Netherlands and South America and all over Canada and Alaska and Mexico and going all over the place. And I would go back to visit my folks, once a year, something like that. This is back before, smartphones. So making a phone call was really hard. So I would only call every 6 months too. So when I would go back and visit, I would, go to do stuff outside and help with things. And they were doing better financially and stuff. So they weren't living off the land the way we had. But I started noticing less deer on the drives from the airport to the house. And then I started noticing when we'd go out fishing, we'd see less fish. And then one night, I was trying to sleep, and I realized I couldn't sleep. I was like, why can't I? I'm able to sleep everywhere. I had slept on a riverboat on the Paraguay River right next to the toilet, which is just a hole in the ground, in the floor, and it was horrible. I'd slept there no problem. Why can't I sleep in my own childhood bed? And then I realized it was too quiet. The whippoorwills that I used to listen to as a kid that go, none of them. The loons that I had grown up listening to, that if you've ever seen a spooky scene in any show or movie, no matter where it is in the world, they could be in Antarctica and you'll still hear a loon that didn't hear them either. And so I was asking my parents what happened. They're like, I don't know. They disappeared 8 months ago. And I started noticing also when I was driving around that some of the places I used to go and swim or go ride my bike now were covered in parking lots and houses and stores and GameStops and Blockbusters. But they were covered in all these things. And there were hardly any people in them because, again, poor area, people can't afford to really go use them. But now there's no wildlife there either. Where I used to see eagles going and ripping up deer carcasses at the side of the road. I know, that's gory. Are you farting for real or just in your mask? I'm just going to stay over here in case it is for real. You shame now. All these places I used to go, the wildlife was gone. The wild places were gone. And this was the part that really bugged me. The wild people were gone. The people who understood how to use it, the people who could survive on their own, the people who would go and enjoy themselves outdoors, now they're sitting inside watching. At the time it was Paris Hilton, but nowadays it'd be the Kardashians. Just sitting inside. I'm not saying it in a nice way. They'd sit inside and do that all day, had no engagement with the outside world. Then I moved to Montana when the recession hit. And I saw the same thing happening, but really, really, really fast. See, for my folks, as it was happening, as the wild places were going away, it's like the frog in the boiling pot principle. Any of y'all ever heard that? First off, don't throw a frog in a boiling pot. You gotta There's got to be something wrong with you to do that. But there was this experiment done a long, long time ago where they had a pot, actually like crazy long time ago, because this is like an old Chinese proverb from 8,000 years ago. You have a pot of boiling water. You try to throw a frog into it, and it hops right out. It's like, it's boiling water. But if you put the frog in the pot when it's not boiling and then put the fire on and slowly raise the heat to the point of boiling, the frog doesn't jump out. It doesn't notice that it's boiling to death as it slowly happens. And that's what had happened to the environment around my family's home and where I'd grown up. And it's what was happening everywhere I went. Everywhere I traveled to, as I would go back to different states and different countries I'd visited, the forests were gone. The marshlands that had been full of birds and beavers and deer and every kind of bug you can imagine that does really cool things and stuff were gone in so many places. Dude, quit farting. And because I got like ADD really bad, and I just hear the farting. It was all going away. So I started reaching out, trying to find places to volunteer, find ways to try to help. I had my own business and stuff at this point. I had learned how to code. How many of you are learning how to code? Okay, every one of y'all should be learning how to code. It is, this is the part in his show where they're chasing a bear with dogs. It's okay. I learned how to code, and so I was able to start my own business, so I was able to live wherever I wanted, but I kept seeing all this stuff going away, so I started volunteering places, started making new friends, started reaching out to folks. How do we fix things? How do we fix things? How do we bring back these wild places so that we don't turn into a bunch of Jabba the Hutts sitting on our couches doing nothing, eating ho-hos and ding-dongs and Cheetos? So it was a couple years ago, well, about 5 years ago now, I got reached out to by a guy who I was regularly volunteering with on different river cleanups, different trail cleanups and stuff like that. He said, hey, I want you to show up for this interview. And I was like, okay, whatever. I didn't know what it was for. Here's a little business pro tip. Know what the interview is before you show up to the interview. He's like, just go to this interview. And I went there. I was like, so you want to hire me for my coding and design skills and stuff? Like, no, we'd like you to run an organization called 2% for Conservation. Like, oh. Pivot, okay. Change of plan. So we started talking about what this was. And what this organization does is we certify people and businesses, so people your age, again, 5th graders and younger, like down to diapers, and then all the way older until you get back to diapers again, because old people wear diapers, right? Treat your parents well, because someday you're going to have to, you're going to return the favor. Anyway, we certify folks from all the way down to diapers and businesses for giving 1% of their time and 1% of their money to fish and wildlife conservation efforts. Now, they don't give us the money. They give it to things they care about. So how many of you like to go to your local parks? How many of you like to go to your local parks? Is that where you like to go to fart? Local park? No? When you go there, do you like to take beer bottles and like throw them at walls and stuff and leave cigarette butts everywhere? I was wondering who was doing that, because I spend a lot of time cleaning that up. Or have you ever hiked down a trail and seen those little green bags sitting on the sides of the trail? You ever stepped on one of those magical green bags? There's a surprise inside. Fun fact, there's no such thing as a poop fairy that comes along and picks up those green bags afterwards. They look like me, or they look like wildlife. They're like, what's that? It smells like food. And then they're eating plastic and what else? It's almost worse that they're eating the plastic, but also there's what they're eating that's inside there. Our wild places are a mess, aren't they? To some degree, especially where there are people nearby, they tend to be a mess. What's a better idea? Pay a couple people to work their butts off all the time trying to clean it up and stay on top of it, or everybody does a little bit. Which do you think is more effective for getting the job done quickly and to keep it getting done? Which one, A or B? One person or everybody? Everybody, right? Yeah, so here's how our model works. Anyone like you can just Google us, 2% for Conservation. We have members on every continent right now. We have folks down in Antarctica. We have folks on the island of Svalbard up in the Arctic Circle working with caribou. We have a guy in South Africa who helped re-release pangolins. Do you guys know what a pangolin is? Hey, screw around guys over here. Do you know what a pangolin is? Okay, then stop drawing attention to yourself. You know what one is? It's not a penguin, a pangolin. What is it? Oh, Bambi? No. A pangolin is like it looks kind of like an armadillo, but with big scales on it. And roughly 1 billion people think that if you eat those scales, it will make you the world's greatest lover. But the thing is, those scales are made out of the same thing that your fingernails are made out of, in reality, lanolin. And so these pangolins, they get captured in South Africa. And they get captured all over Africa, actually. They get captured all over India. And they get shuttered off to Southeast Asia and to China, to markets where some people think pangolins might have been involved with the start of COVID because they were all packed in tight together. And they can transmit colds like COVID and stuff. So you're like, I want to blame the pangolins. No, it's not their fault. They got picked up and transported away. Well, this guy uses dogs, specially trained dogs, to hunt these poachers down. And they hunt them down like in the bush in South Africa. If you ever study South Africa, you think our Southwest has a lot of cacti? Woo-wee! South Africa is like everything there is pokey or wants to kill you. So they're out there with these dogs chasing these guys down. They capture some of these pangolins that had been poached that are still alive. And so they were trying to re-release them to get them back out into the wild. And they'd let them go, and the pangolins would go out, and they'd get on the ground, and they'd curl up in a ball and stay there until they died. What the deuce, man? So what this guy finally figured out, that these pangolins, they get bonded to their poachers, which is like Stockholm syndrome for wildlife. That's the thing you'll learn about later if you do well in school. It has nothing to do with Sweden. Well, it does, but you'll get it. They would take these pangolins. The way he figured it out was just last year. He took a bunch of volunteers to do this, people giving their time, at least 1% of their time, and they would walk with these pangolins like you're walking a dog. And these are wild, and they would walk them for days until eventually the pangolins would walk off on their own. But they had done a tricky thing. They put cameras on the pangolins and trackers on them so they could see where they went, so they could keep them safe. And they set up a camera in one of the dens that they saw one of the females going to. She ended up giving birth, which is like that's the first time that's ever happened, that's ever been documented, of a pangolin that had been captured in the wildlife trade, doing it in the wild. Because people volunteered their time and dollars, pangolins are being restored. They're very endangered. We also have members up in Canada, the southernmost herd of caribou in the world, which caribou are kind of like reindeer, like they're pretty much the same. There's distinctions depending on the country you're in. The southernmost herd of caribou used to be in the lower 48 in the United States, in Idaho, just north of here. Caribou actually used to be all the way down, like almost to Nevada, almost to your border. But they got hunted out, and they got outcompeted, and they weren't able to keep up. And so actually, 2018, how many of y'all were alive in 2018? I would hope so. I mean, I want to hear your story if you weren't, but in 2018, the last 2 caribou in the lower 48 left. They had to be taken to Canada because they were going to go extinct down here, so we moved them before they could die. Well, 2 years ago, I get a call in British Columbia. We have this southernmost herd of caribou here. Used to be about 200 of them. We're down to 9. And now they're going to be gone forever. But 4 of them are pregnant. What we need is $65,000 Canadian, so $38,000 US or something like that. But $65,000, and we need it in the next week before this blizzard comes. I was like, that's cool. What for? And we're going to put in a calving pen. Cool. What's that? It's basically a pen that they bring in with a helicopter high up into the mountains where these caribou are, and they drop it in. It's about the size of this room, this big old room here. And they drop it around the herd so that nothing can get in to bother them while they're having their babies. So instead of getting chased by wolves and mountain lions and people on snowmobiles while they're trying to have their babies and raise their babies, they can have them without being, accosted. And so we reached out to all of our business members all over the world, in Scotland, in Australia, and in Canada, and Brazil, and all over the US. And we said, hey, we have 1 week to raise $65,000 Canadian to save the southernmost herd of caribou in the world. And we raised $70,000 in 3 days. Because folks had made the commitment of giving their time and their money to save wildlife, to save wild places, so that as humans don't end up looking like little Jabba the Hutt sitting on our couches at home. And the pen went in. Now the herd is up to 54 caribou. And they're not living in the pen all the time. They take them out of the pen after they have their babies, and their babies are able to grow up a little bit. And then they spend the spring and summer and stuff all running around normal. And then in the middle of the winter, when they find the pregnant ones, and they move them into the pen so that they can keep having their babies and stuff so that they can rebuild the herd. That would not be possible without people helping. And here's the crazy thing. 2 6th graders from Indiana gave $500 to help that program from their babysitting money, because they are certified businesses with our organization. They actually have business cards that have our logo on it that says we give our time and our dollars to Fish and Wildlife Conservation. So here is my challenge to you guys. Are you going to not be remembered, or are you going to do something that is memorable and lives beyond you? I know you're in 5th grade. My son's in 5th grade. Honestly, it's like the best grade, by the way. After here, it's all down. Life just goes down. No, I'm kidding. You're going to have wonderful time the rest of middle school and high school. But right now is a key time for deciding what you're going to be. Are you going to be forgotten, not memorable, not do anything worth anything in your life? Or no matter what you have for a job, no matter what you have for friends, no matter what your social situation is, are you going to find a way to make the world better and to be a positive impact? That's your choice. Only your choice. So one thing that we do is we have every business and individual that wants to get certified with us and make that commitment, we let them choose where they give. They never send us money, other than the businesses send us dues because we're kind of like the Better Business Bureau. But for conservation, they send us a little bit of money. For example, last year, our budget, so all the money that our organization brought in, was less than $90,000. That's less than most adults get paid in my state. And that was for our whole organization. But our membership gave over $8 million to save fish and wildlife, and donated the equivalent of $4 million of volunteer time around the world. And here's a crazy thing for you. I looked up the 6th grader and 5th grader statistics in our membership. There are roughly 400 5th graders who are doing what we do right now all over the U.S. and Canada. We don't have them overseas, but all over the U.S. and Canada. So with that, I keep seeing hands doing like this little thing. Anyone have any questions before we split? Yeah.
I don't know some way if I can help out, but how do you get money?
How do you get money? Get a job. You can shovel driveways when there's a little bit of snow. You can go and like there's tons of things that you can do. Yeah.
Can you answer this question in a deep voice? And did you get a driver license when you were 16?
No, I got it when I was 14. Yeah. What's that?
When you told us about your story, how did you brush your teeth?
How did I brush my teeth in the car? I didn't. I would go to either a local restaurant or something like that and brush my teeth in there, and I would shower at truck stops. Homeless hacks. All right, I think it's time for you guys to go. If you're trying to look us up, fishandwildlife.org, or just Google 2% for conservation. Have a great day.